thought a hindrance in her view was some weird movements that she used to do. So very good morning to everyone present here. I am Sagnick Dutta, and today on behalf of the entire team would like to initiate today's discussion. So I would like to start with a very simple clinical case where a 65-year-old lady comes to the clinician and she starts walking with a very small stick, and moreover she remains in a very drooped condition, and when we see her face, it's masked and expressionless. So in today's discussion we would like to find the reason to that, why she is behaving like that. As we can see, most of the symptoms in the patient is some kind of a voluntary movement. So we would like to first start with the various kinds and how the voluntary movements are controlled. So the causes for the voluntary movement starts and originates in the cortical association areas. The cortex, the basal ganglia, and the cerebellum work cooperatively to plan the movements. Then the movement is being executed by the cortex relayed via the corticospinal and the corticobulbar tracts. And in between, the cerebellum sends some feedback to adjust and smoothen the movement. Now, before we have seen the patient, and we can find a probable cause that it might be because of a very important part of our brain, that is the basal ganglia. Now, what actually is the basal ganglia? The basal ganglia is a collection of deep structures. To be more specific, a collection of deep nuclei surrounded by white matter present under the cortex and is related to the thalamus. It helps in planning and programming of various motor activities and storing of cognitive motor functions as well. Moreover, it helps in timing and scaling of various movements, and it also helps in the adjustment of the muscle tone. Now, when we have known what the basal ganglia actually is, we should question ourselves that is the name basal ganglia a correct one? What we actually mean by the term basal ganglia or the term ganglia in particular is a group of cell bodies of the nerve cells present in the peripheral nervous system. But in this case, it is present in the central nervous system, to be more precise, in the brain. So it is this disparity which makes us think twice, and we should rectify ourselves and call it the basal nuclei and not the basal ganglia. So now when we have known about the basal ganglia, we should get to the various parts of the basal ganglia, and for that I would like to call upon my partner Burdwan.
So, good morning, all listeners, and I am Burdwan, and let's see what is the anatomy of the basal ganglia. The term the basal ganglia is implied to 5 interactive nuclei. This interactive nuclei includes 5 interactive nuclei, that means caudate, putamen nucleus, globus pallidus, and the subthalamic nuclei and the substantia nigra. Now, how they are positioned among themselves?
Hey, are you carrying a mobile in your pocket? Are you carrying a mobile in your pocket?
Now, how these nuclei are positioned among themselves? First, I have a cross section like this, and what is the present near the midline? They are egg-like structure. These two egg-like structures are called thalami. Lateral to this thalami, there is a mass of gray matter, and this mass of gray matter lentiform nucleus. Between this thalamus and the lentiform nuclei, there is a mass of white matter that is called internal capsule. And through this internal capsule, some fibers are going down and some fibers are going up. Some fibers are going down to the descending corpuscular and some fibers are going up. Now, this lentiform nucleus is divided into two parts. The outermost part of the lentiform nucleus, it is called putamen, and the innermost part of the lentiform nucleus, it is called globus pallidus. Again, the globus pallidus, it is divided into two parts. The outermost part of the globus pallidus, it is called globus pallidus externa, and the innermost part of the globus pallidus, that is called globus pallidus interna. Now, there is another mass of gray matter. As what we see, the near the midline, there are two egg-like structure. This is the thalami. Now, there is a mass of gray matter. This is the C-shaped nucleus of C-shaped nucleus. This C-shaped nucleus goes over the thalamus and then goes forwards and lateral, and then goes behind the thalamus, then goes under this lentiform nucleus. This C-shaped mass of gray matter is called caudate nucleus. This caudate nucleus has three parts. That is the head portion, this is the body portion, and this is the tail portion. And this tail portion of the caudate nucleus has a rounded mass of gray matter, and that is called amygdaloid body. And this amygdaloid body, it is connected with the limbic system. And we also know that the limbic system has also a role in our emotional expression by our movements of our facial muscles. So now, medial to this lentiform nucleus, there is the internal capsule, and also this lateral to the lentiform nucleus, there also lies a thin mass of white matter that is called external capsule. This lentiform nucleus, it is embedded between this internal capsule and external capsule. Now, at the near the base of this thalamus, what we get, the two structures that is called subthalamic nuclei, and in the midbrain there is another important structure that is called substantia nigra. And this substantia nigra, the anterior part of the substantia nigra, it is less densely packed, and the posterior part of the substantia nigra, it is more densely packed. So thus this anterior part is called substantia nigra pars reticulata, and the posterior part is called substantia nigra pars compacta. And from this, and also this pars reticulata part of the substantia nigra, this is the downmost detached part of the globus pallidus interna, because they have analogous connections and they have identical origin. And later we see that these are the analogous connections. And now let's see the first we have the 5 element nucleus, and the most important nucleus is the caudate nucleus, and the putamen, and the globus pallidus. This caudate and putamen is collectively called paliostrata, neostrata, and this globus pallidus is exclusively called neostrata. Now, ongoing in this seminar, when I term this the term stratum, the stratum term is directly equivalent to neostrata. Now, there are various connections in the from the cerebral cortex and thalamus. There are inputs to the basal ganglia and some outputs to the basal ganglia. Now, what are the inputs to the basal ganglia? That is from the cerebral cortex to the stratum. What the stratum means? Stratum means the caudate nucleus and the putamen. These fibers are called corticostriatal fibers, and these are corticostriatal fibers use the neurotransmitter glutamate, and these are the excitatory fibers. And from this thalamus, these are also coming fibers, that is the thalamostriatal fibers. And why these thalamostriatal fibers are required? Because from the cerebellum, different proprioceptive feedbacks are coming to the thalamus, and also when the basal ganglia is planning the various motor plants, they require the different proprioceptive feedbacks, because the motor plants are different according to our position of our body. See, if there is a cup of tea, when the primary position of our hand is like this, there is another movement. But when I am scratching my hand, they are scratching my head with my hand, different body position, and these different body position are coming to this thalamus striatal fibers through the cerebellum, and the different proprioceptive feedbacks are coming to the thalamus, and then they relay on this thalamus. These are the two main major inputs to the basal ganglia: the corticostriatal fibers and the thalamus-striatal fibers. Now, what are the major outputs of the basal ganglia? The major outputs of the basal ganglia are from this globus pallidus internal and the pars reticulata. What I have said is pars reticulata part of the substantia nigra and the globus pallidus internal have identical origin and have analogous connection. So from this substantia, from this globus pallidus internal and pars reticulata part of the substantia nigra, they are projecting fibers to the ventro-anterior and the ventrolateral nucleus of the thalamus. These are the these fibers use the neurotransmitter GABA, and these fibers are inhibitively responsive. So these are the major inputs and these are the major outputs of this basal ganglia. Now what is the main function? That is the basal ganglia functions mainly through two pathways, that is the direct pathway and also the indirect pathway. And let's Sunita will explain what is the direct pathway and what is the indirect pathway.
basic function of the basal ganglia is planning and programming of different motor activities. Now, let's take an example. When we write the letter A on the paper or any other letter maybe, or do some very precise works like cutting a paper with a scissor, we need the help of the basal ganglia, and for that the putamen part of the basal ganglia comes into action, and for that we will get to know about the putamen circuit. In the putamen circuit, the neuronal pathways starts from the pre-motor and the supplementary areas of the motor cortex and the somatosensory areas of the sensory cortex. From that, it goes to the putamen bypassing the caudate nucleus, and then it goes to the internal part of the globus pallidus. From the internal part of the globus pallidus, it gives to the relay nuclei of the ventral, anterior and ventrolateral parts of the thalamus. From that, it again returns back to the primary motor cortex areas. So we can conclude that the putamen circuit gets most of its neuronal connections from the areas adjacent to the primary motor areas and not directly from the primary motor areas. Now let us take another example to elaborate the function of basal ganglia more. For example, a hunter who goes for hunting in the jungle. Now he knows how to climb a tree and he faces a lion in the jungle. What his immediate actions will be that he will turn away from the lion and he will run away and he will try to find a tree to climb that up to save himself. Now this won't be possible if he didn't have the previous memories of all these. Now the cognitive functions is also controlled by the basal ganglia, and for that the caudate part of the basal ganglia comes to play. And for that we will get to know the caudate circuit. The caudate circuit is a little different from the putamen circuit. In that case, the caudate nucleus gets its neuronal connections from major parts of the cortex, namely the frontal, the parietal as well as the occipital areas of the cortex. But in the putamen circuit we saw that it was not the case. After receiving its neuronal connection, it goes to the caudate circuit, and then it goes to the internal part of the globus pallidus, and finally to the relay nuclei of the ventroanterior and ventrolateral parts of the thalamus. And finally, the neuronal connection goes to the prefrontal and premotor and supplementary areas of the cortex. Here we can conclude that most of the neuronal fibers do not return back to the primary motor cortex area. Now another major function of the basal ganglia is the timing and scaling of various motor movements. For example, we the normal persons, when we write the letter A in a piece of paper or on the blackboard, we maintain a proportionality. But for a person who has got a deformed basal ganglia won't be able to do that, because the basal ganglia works in close association with the posterior parietal cortex to maintain the proportionality of various actions that you perform. Now when we have known about the functions of the basal ganglia today, we would like to go to the various diseases caused by the deformations in the basal ganglia. For that I would like to call upon stage my friend Burdwan.
Good morning everyone. Today we will see the presentation of Parkinson's disease. Now let us see about the history of Parkinson's disease. In the year 1870, in London, a physician, Dr. James Parkinson, first described the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. But at that point of time, it was not known as the Parkinson's disease. Rather, it was known as the paralysis agitans or the second pulse. Dr. James Parkinson essay on the Sagnick policy. Now, let us take a look on the chief complaints of the patient or the cardinal features of Parkinson's disease. Number one, there is hypokinesia, which itself consists of two other components, akinesia and bradykinesia. Then we have resting tremors followed with rigidity and postural instability. Now let us take a look on the pathophysiology of Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease mainly occurs due to the degeneration of nitrostriatal dopaminergic neurons. Now the dopamine, which is released from substantia nigra pars compacta, has two main effects. Firstly, by acting on the D1 dopaminergic receptors, it activates the direct pathway, and similarly, by acting on the D2 type of dopaminergic receptors, it inhibits the indirect pathway. Both of these phenomena ultimately result in the facilitation of movement. Now, as in the case of Parkinson's disease, dopamine is not released, there is a net inhibition of movement. Now let us take a look on the detailed circuitry of Parkinson's disease. At first the dopamine which was stimulating the striatum is no longer present in Parkinson's disease. As a result, the striatum releases less amount of GABA on the globus pallidus internus. Thus, the globus pallidus internus now becomes more stimulated and it releases more amount of GABA on the ventroanterior anteventrolateral complex of thalamus. Thus, the thalamus is relieved of its stimulatory state. Thus, the thalamus releases less amount of glutamate to the frontal cortex, thereby there is a net inhibition of movement. Also, we can see the following in the indirect pathway, as the dopamine causes inhibition of the indirect pathway. Now, as in case of Parkinson's disease, there is no inhibition of the indirect pathway. Therefore, the striatum releases more GABA on the globus pallidus externus. Thus, the globus pallidus externus now becomes inhibited and it releases less amount of GABA on the subthalamic nucleus. Thus, the subthalamic nucleus now gets stimulated and as a result, it releases more amount of glutamate on this globus pallidus internus. Thus, this globus pallidus internus now gets stimulated. As a result, it releases more amount of GABA on the ventrolateral and ventroanterior complex of thalamus. Thus, the thalamus now gets inhibited and as a result, it releases less amount of glutamate to the frontal cortex, thereby causing the net inhibition of the movements. Now let us see about the various etiologies of the Parkinson's disease. Among it, one of the most important is drug-induced Parkinsonism. The very phrase drug-induced Parkinsonism refers to the fact that Parkinson's disease can occur as a result of side effect of many other drugs. They are specifically categorized into various categories. At first, we have the anticyclic of drugs. Among them, the notable ones are fluphenazine and chlorpromazine. There is MPTP, then anti-nausea medication like metoclopramide, and anti-convulsion medication like sodium valproate, and other medications like lithium and manganese. Now, besides this etiology, there are other etiologies also which can cause the Parkinson's disease. Number one, we have the punch drunk disease or the traumatic head injury. Now, this is specifically seen in the case of boxers where they get an injury on the head and there are chances that this area may get destroyed. An interesting fact to here is that Muhammad Ali, who was a very renowned boxer, who passed away a few years back, was also a sufferer of Parkinson's disease. Then we have other etiologies also, like vascular causes like atherosclerosis, neurosyphilis, Huntington's disease, Wilson's disease, etc. Now, for the clinical features and the treatment of Parkinson's disease, I would like to call upon the stage my fellow batchmate Pushpa.
Now, what are the different clinical features of the Parkinson's disease? There are two types of clinical features. Now, there are two types of clinical features. That is the hypokinesia and that is the hyperkinesia. Hypokinesia means that is the decrease in movements, and this hypokinesia includes akinesia and the bradykinesia. Akinesia means there is a difficulty in starting the movement, and bradykinesia means slowness of the movement. Difficulty in starting the difficulty to start the work, difficulty to write something. This is the akinesia. But what is the bradykinesia? That means the slowness of the movement. This bradykinesia component can be assessed by various maneuvers. That is the tapping of the index finger with this thumb. This component should be amplitude-wise bigger and frequency-wise should be higher. But what can we see in the case of Parkinson's disease? This component, that means the tapping of the index finger with this thumb finger, the amplitude becomes smaller over time and the frequency becomes slower over time. That's like this. So this bradykinesia component can be accessed by this maneuver, and also there can be fist open and close maneuver, that is the supination pronation maneuver, and in the case of lower limb there may be toe tapping or there may be hip tapping. In all this maneuver you will see there is a substantial reduction in the case of amplitude wise and also in the frequency wise. It is the bradykinesia component. And what is the gait and balance issue? There is a slow and very suppling gait. Suppling gait means there is a very difficulty to raise the leg. That is the slow and suppling gait. And there is a stooped posture, and there is a characteristic gait in the Parkinson's disease that is always some chasing this center of the gravity. As if the patient walks as if that is always chasing the center of this gravity. That is called estimate gait. And also due to the disruption of the automatic associated movements in the case of walking, this swinging of the arms is also absent. Now in the case of gait and balance issues, how can we assess this gait and balance issues in the case of Parkinson's disease? This is the pull test. Now suppose this is a normal person. When I pull the normal person backwards, what happens? He walks backwards 2 or 3 steps and he can catch his balance. But in the case of Parkinson's disease, what happens? When I pull the patient backwards, he walks backwards 2 or 3 steps, but he cannot catch his balance. And he can fall on me, and I can also lose my balance, and I can fall also backwards. But in this case, you should be always careful that you should have a support of wall behind me, so that I cannot fall backwards. By this test, the pull test, we can assess the gait and balance issues of the Parkinson's disease. And also in the case of Parkinson's disease, the face becomes stony, expressionless, and inappropriately calm, because the basal ganglia has a role in the case of limbic system, and limbic system has a role in our emotional expression. So in the case of Parkinson's disease, this face becomes stony, and this called is masked face. And this is the what I have described. These are the hypokinetic features. And now let's describe that is the hyperkinetic features. In the case of Parkinson's disease, the hyperkinetic features include the rigidity component and the tremors component. And what is the rigidity? Rigidity means increase in muscle tone. And what is the muscle tone? The muscle tone is, it is the resistance provided during the passive movements of the joint which stretches the muscle concerned. So when I extend the forearm, this stretches the biceps muscle and the resistance is provided, and this resistance, when this resistance is increased, that is called rigidity. In the case of Parkinson's disease, there are two types of rigidity, that is the leg pipe rigidity and the cogwheel rigidity. What is the leg pipe rigidity? Leg pipe rigidity means when you passively move the joint, there is a feeling like you are bending a leg pipe. That is called the leg pipe rigidity, like this. When you add, there is another term apart from this rigidity, that is called spasticity. In the case of rigidity, both flexor and the extensor group of muscles are involved, but in the case of spasticity, only one group of muscle is involved. And there is another term, cogwheel rigidity. Cogwheel rigidity means in the case of primitive wall, what you mean by cogwheel? When in the case of primitive wall, there is a wheel and some buckets are attached with this wheel. So when these buckets are filled with water, there is a charge. So this cogwheel rigidity means there is a presence of rigidity and also tremors, like this. This is a cogwheel rigidity with the presence of tremors. And there is another hyperkinetic features that includes the tremors. In the case of Parkinson's disease, what we see, that is the resting tremor. Resting tremor means this is the present at rest, and when we start any movement, this tremor disappears. And also, there is another tremor that is called intentional tremor, and this intentional tremor appears in the case of cerebral disease. So, what is the intentional tremor? Intentional tremor, when you are approaching any target, this intentional tremor intensifies. That is called intentional tremor. And also there is another type of tremor that is found in the case of Parkinson's disease, that is the re-emergent tremor. Re-emergent tremor means when you instruct the patient to hold the arm like this, firstly the resting tremor disappears, but after few seconds this tremor also appears. So that is called re-emergent tremor. So this re-emergent tremor is also found in case of Parkinson's disease. Now these are the clinical features of the Parkinson's disease. Now what is the treatment of this Parkinson's disease? Before going into the treatment of the Parkinson's disease, there are some biochemical reactions are going in the presynaptic neuron and postsynaptic neuron. What are those biochemical reactions? In the case of presynaptic neuron, the tyrosine, it is converted into tyrosine hydroxylase to the L-dopa, that is called levodopa, and levodopa it is converted into dopa by the enzyme dopa decarboxylase. So tyrosine is converted into levodopa by the enzyme tyrosine hydroxylase. Levodopa is converted into dopamine by the enzyme dopa decarboxylase, and in the presynaptic neuron, this dopamine is put into synaptic vesicles, and when there is any physiological stimuli is coming, these synaptic vesicles, which is where the dopamine is put, and these are released in the synaptic layer, and the excess dopamine which are not used, that is put into the presynaptic neuron again, and the excess dopamine is also metabolized in the glial cells by the two enzymes. Dopamine is metabolized by two enzymes, that is called monoamine oxidase and COMT, catechol-o-methyl transferase. And what is the most predominant type found in the monoamine oxidase? That is the monoamine oxidase B enzyme, and this dopamine is metabolized by the monoamine oxidase B and catechol-o-methyl transferase enzyme. And also what happens? There is another when is levodopa is also metabolized in the peripheral region. But how is levodopa? That levodopa is in the this is occurring in the central nervous system. But when in the peripheral nervous system, what happens? This levodopa it is metabolized by also two enzymes. That is the peripheral dopa decarboxylase. This is the central dopa decarboxylase. But levodopa it is also metabolized by the enzyme peripheral dopa decarboxylase and also peripheral catechol-o-methyl transferase. Now these are the biochemical reactions are going on. So now what is the treatment? The most commonly used drug in the case of Parkinson's disease is the levodopa. Why not dopa? Because levodopa can cross the blood-brain barrier, but the dopamine cannot cross the blood-brain barrier. And when the levodopa can cross the blood-brain barrier, it is converted to the dopamine by the dopamine carboxylase enzyme and supplementing the storage of the dopamine. Now, this levodopa can be broken down by the two enzymes. So how can we resist it? So levodopa is administered with the carbidopa. So carbidopa inhibits this enzyme dopamine carboxylase so that more and more levodopa is available to the brain. But carbidopa inhibits this peripheral dopamine carboxylase. But what happens in this case? Carbidopa does not cross the blood-brain barrier, so it does not inhibit this process. And levodopa is converted into dopamine in the central nervous system and supplementing the effect, supplementing the storage of the dopamine. Now, there is another enzyme which inhibits this catechol-omethyltransferase enzyme. That is the peripheral breakdown of the catechol-omethyltransferase. That is the entacapone. Entacapone inhibits the peripheral COMT enzyme. And also, now the dopamine is also metabolized inside the central nervous system by fluid, that is the monoamine oxidase and catechol-omethyltransferase in the central nervous system. So this by decreasing this breakdown, by decreasing the breakdown of the dopamine, we can also sustain the level of the dopamine. So what is the main thing? That is the monoamine oxidase. We have to inhibit this monoamine oxidase, and we also inhibit this COMT in the central nervous system. This group of drugs is called tolcapone, and it is the peripheral that is called entacapone. It is the tolcapone, it is the entacapone. And this monoamine oxidase, it is inhibited by serotonin and a basal group of drugs. Now, when this dopamine it acts on the postsynaptic neuron in the receptors, so some amount of drugs that mimics the action of the drug. That means it mimics the action of the drug, and when some drugs will be attached with these postsynaptic receptors, they have the same effect. So this group of drugs are called dopamine agonists. These group of drugs include bromocriptine, pramipexole, ropinirole, and also apomorphine. So these group of drugs are called dopamine agonists. Now what happens? There is in the striatum. Striatum means that is the podded nucleus and the putamen. There are two group of neurons. That is which some group of neurons use the neurotransmitter. Some group of neurons use the dopaminergic system, and some group of neurons use the acetylcholine. In the striatum, there is a delicate balance between this dopaminergic group of neurons and this is the acetylcholinergic neurons. So when the dopamine secreting neurons become less, this acetylcholine secreting neurons takes the accent higher.
Sorry, in striatum there are dopaminergic neuron. In striatum there are dopaminergic neuron, and in striatum there are dopaminergic neuron. And
No, sir. Striatum is the dopamine.
who are receiving dopamine, they are not dopaminergic. Please correct us.
So in the striatum there are some neurons which are dopamine receiving and some neurons are acetylcholinergic neurons. So there is a
Cholinergic, they are receiving. Cholinergic.
they are also receiving the acetylcholine. So there is a delicate balance between this dopaminergic the neurons which use the dopamine and also the neurons which use this acetylcholine. Now, when this acetylcholinergic neurons, the neurons use the acetylcholine, they get activated. The hyperkinetic features arise. That is the rigidity and the tremors. So we have to decrease the effects of this decrease the effects of this the neurons which use the acetylcholine. So what are the anti-acetylcholinergic drugs? That is the bivalirudin, brihexiphenidine. Also these are the drugs which are the acetylcholine. So these are the different kinds of drugs which we use in the case of treatment of the Parkinson's disease. Now there are different types of disease. Apart from this Parkinson's disease, there are different types of disease like Huntington's chorea, Wilson disease, Hepatitis 1, and these are described by our fellow and we describe next program.
সেগুলোকে পড়ে
Hello everyone. Now we will discuss about a very interesting disease which is Huntington's disease. Now Huntington's disease is a progressive fatal highly penetrant autosomal dominant disorder characterized by motor, behavioral, oculomotor and cognitive disturbances. The Huntington's disease, also known as Huntington's chorea, because the patients affected by this disease show rapid, non-purposeful, involuntary movements of especially the upper limb, which very closely resembles the dance. Now the chorea in Greek means dance. So the Huntington's disease also referred as Huntington's chorea. Now the disease was first discovered by a famous family physician, George Huntington. Now we will see the pathophysiology of the Huntington's disease. The Huntington's disease is caused mainly by the degeneration of the GABAergic neurons of the striatum. Along with this, there is also degeneration of the acetylcholine secreting neurons in different parts of the brain, which explains the dementia in these patients. Now we will see a very interesting fact about this disease. Now the patients who are affected by this disease, they are very normal up to the age of 30 to 40 years. Now when they reach at the age of about 30 years, suddenly the symptoms of this disease break out in them, and they progress very rapidly and they may be dead by this disease. Now we will see the pathway of the Huntington's disease. The Huntington's disease is mainly affects the indirect pathway. Now, as we have already mentioned, the GABAergic fiber of the striatum is degenerated, so the globus pallidus externus, which is inhibited by the GABAergic fiber of the striatum, is released from its inhibition, which results into the excess release of the GABA into the subthalamic nucleus. So the neurons of the subthalamic nucleus, become less active. So the stimulatory effect on the globus pallidus internus becomes less. So which in turn less inhibits the thalamus. So as the thalamus is less inhibited, so the thalamocortical pathway is overstimulated. So this results in overexcitation of the cerebral cortex, which results in the hyperkinesia of the patient in this disease. Now we will see some clinical features of Huntington's chorea. Now as we can see in this video, the patient shows the jerky movement of his hands. This
of famous dancer Michael Jackson. Now it is the very distinct legal feature of the Huntington's chorea. Now there are also some other features which are dysarthria, oculomotor abnormalities, dementia, suicidal tendencies, depression, etc. Now as the disease progresses, the chorate problem or chorate movement increases and the cognitive and behavioral disturbances develop more prominently. Now we will see the treatment of the Huntington's disease. But we are very unfortunate to say that there is no such specific treatment of the Huntington's disease, as this is a genetic disorder. Now there is no disease modifying therapy of the Huntington's disease. We should go for the symptomatic treatment. The drug tetrabenazine can be used to reduce the choraic movement. Now there is a very important fact about the Huntington's disease. The gene of the Huntington's disease lies in the short arm of the chromosome number 4. This gene includes 18 to 30 number of trinucleotide repeats, which in case of the Huntington disease patient increases up to the 48 to 90 number, which after generation the number of trinucleotide repeats increases and the severity of the disease also increases. So we have to do a immense prenatal screening to ensure that no child is born with this defective gene. Now we will move forward to another disease, which is apoptosis. Now the term apoptosis means slow rhythmic movement of the hand, which is spontaneous and often continuous. The main reason of this type of movement is the degeneration of the globus pallidus. Now apoptosis can be caused secondarily by stroke, Huntington's disease, internal asphyxia, neonatal jaundice, etc. Now the other diseases will be described by my fellow teammate Sagnick Dutta.
Talking about the Wilson's disease, it is an autosomal recessive disorder which is accompanied by a degenerative proper metabolism disorder, and it also includes psychiatric as well as genetic disorders. And because it mainly affects the lenticular nucleus, it is also known as hepatolenticular degeneration. Talking about the pathology of this disease, it is mainly caused due to the mutation in a proper transporter gene called ATP7 gene, and as a result, copper gets accumulated in the various tissues of the body, mainly the liver, kidney, and eye. Now, talking about the features of this disease, it is dystonia, which is actually some disturbances in the muscle growth. And the most characteristic feature of this disease is the Kaiser pressure ring in the cornea. And it is also accompanied by some bladder and bowel dysfunction. And it is the most diagnostic feature of the disease is also the Kaiser pressure ring, and some MRI scans can also be done. As well as the common diagnostic diagnosis, it can be helped as a feature to diagnose the disease. Now let us talk about the disease hemiplegia. Now talking about the disease hemiplegia, it is mainly accompanied by some sudden flaming involuntary movements. And if it affects one limb, it is known as monoplegia, and if it affects both the limbs, it is known as paraplegia. And it is caused due to the degeneration of the subthalamic nucleus. Now, as we have known and discussed about all the diseases related to the basal ganglia, we would like to summarize by saying that the basal ganglia is a very important structure of the brain which helps in planning and programming of
We talked about the limbic part of the basal ganglia, limbic function of the basal ganglia. These are the parts that are participating in this limbic function. Amygdala body is particularly limbic circuit, but the basal ganglia has many functions like the motor function, we said about the cognitive function. There are some limbic functions also. That selection of limbic function is the filter. These are the parts that is say important for the basal ganglia. Now students, any question?
তোমরা লিভোডোপা কার্বিডোপা সম্বন্ধে বলেছো, তোমরা আউটকাম অফ দ্য মেডিসিনে এখন তোমরা ফার্স্ট ইয়ারে যাওনি। হোয়াট ইজ দ্য আউটকাম অফ ইউর পেশেন্ট? দ্যাট ইজ মোস্ট ইম্পর্টেন্ট অ্যাজ এ ডক্টর। As a doctor, you should have put some points on rehabilitative measures, improvement steps to take the cognitive improvement of cognitive functions, and to stabilize them in their society, in the work field. At the vital point, you stress excessively on the neural connections, but missed out on the vital function because you are going to be society's doctor. কি করতে পারো সেটা বলো। একটা elderly 69 years old recently developed working solution ডেভেলপ করেছে, তার ট্রিটমেন্ট প্রোফাইল একটু বলো এবং রিহ্যাবিলিটেটিভ মেজার্স গুলো বলো। The forum you are addressing as a future doctor. Now think about it. বাকি পড়া জিনিস নয়, বই থেকে নয়। Now I am putting you in a open field. এবার expression of yourself. নিজে এবার বলো, যেটা করে এসছো প্র্যাকটিস পেপার নয়, এবার তুমি কি বলবে সেটা আমাকে না, সবাইকে বলো একটু আস্তে সাইলেন্স। এই মাইকটা অফ করা আছে। That a patient, elderly patient can die of is a fall, উড়ে যাওয়া। এর পরে হবে প্রশ্ন নাও, কোন বাড়ি তুমি নেক্সট অন্য স্যারেরা যা জিজ্ঞেস করবো সেগুলো ওকে, তুমি এটা পয়েন্টটা বলে দেবে, এটা পারবে না। What should be done to relieve anxiety? What should be done to relieve pain? What should be done to relieve disease? এটা ক্যাটেগরিক্যালি বলতে হবে। আর যেটা বললেন যে
Basal Ganglia. If you ask us only one question, if we have not find the answer, cannot have only one question. Follow?
I myself say that the term basal ganglia itself is a wrong term and it should be quoted as basal ganglia. But while we were preparing, I was thinking that why for the rest of the slides we were mentioning the term basal ganglia. And it was because most of the books and the doctors themselves, they are using the term basal ganglia themselves. And so we didn't have the audacity to change the term basal ganglia. So I thought this can be changed in the
A
book.
question, no suggestion. A question.
Yeah, I mean, why should we stick to the old curriculum and not upgrade ourselves?
Why this name are given? What is key in my mind regarding Basal Ganglia? The biggest question in my mind, I don't know what is your mind. Who says the substantial lighter plus secrets to form? এটা যে ডিজায়ার মুভমেন্ট এবং তুমি মুভমেন্টের সিক্রেট করো, who says it to do it? Do you know, have the answer of that?
কোন কমান্ডে একটা নিউরোসেক্রিটারি হরমোন তৈরি হচ্ছে?
Actually, what dopamine is doing? Okay, this secreted when a desired movement, when a desired planning, when a desired emotion is right for the surrounding. Okay, for the environment. In that time, the dopamine is secreted from the substance like the first compound. But who says something who direct substantial like the first compound down to secret dopamine? Who knows the answer of that? Have you can you document that corticostriatal fibers in any book it is written that corticostriatal fibers is commanding substances like secrets, dopamine?
The posterior peduncle cortex because it has got the locus of all the
পড়েছো তো কিসে করছে পড়েছো তো ভেবে বলছো ওটা পড়েছো কি পড়লে আমাকে দেখছি না সেটাই বলছি না না আমিও জানি না সেটাই তো
এই দেরিবেলা ভিডিও
Thank you all the speakers for your nice presentation. But one thing you missed, that is one important disease in newborn that affects basal ganglia. Can you name that disease?
Sir, in case of neonatal jaundice, because the blood-brain barrier in the neonates is not so well developed, the minute it crosses the blood-brain barrier, it can get accumulated in the basal ganglia. As a result, the neonates basal ganglia are affected.
That is called bilirubin encephalopathy. There are stages of bilirubin encephalopathy. Terminal stage is called cardiac. Okay. Never miss it, and it is an important thing, and you have to prevent it. Can you name some condition which can exaggerate this condition, neonatal jaundice? Etiology, regarding etiology, neonatal jaundice, which can lead to cardiac arrest. RH incompatibility, avion incompatibility, where jaundice appears within 24 hours.
preterm baby ওটা পারবে না স্যার
Thank you, sir.
এটা